Welcome back. We take a closer look at the day's market action now with Andrew Padoa from Sasfin Wealth. Thank you so much for your time, Andrew. Well, the U.S. tariffs have finally kicked in, and the markets, and particularly the local market, actually seem to be taking it in their stride. Has the risk been fully baked in here?
Zanati, thank you for having me. I think markets kind of saw this one coming, so it's no surprise that here we are with 30% tariffs, and markets are kind of just brushing it off and carrying on. I think the big thing now is to wait and see what the economic consequences of all these tariffs are going to be, and we'll only know that in a couple of months' times. But then also, secondly, what reserve banks around the world are now going to do. Are they going to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to cutting rates, or a little bit more aggressive now that we have some clarity on the tariffs? But we'll have to wait and see.
Well, as you're talking about central banks, so one that actually had a tough decision, seemingly considering the narrow split of votes that they had, is the Bank of England. What's your take on that cut that they had to decide, I think, after a second meeting, and really just the difficulty in reaching that consensus?
Yeah. Well, if I look at UK inflation, post-COVID, they got north of 10%. Of inflation in the UK, which is it was a huge number for a country like the United Kingdom or England. So if I look at their inflation rates now, they have started to climb over the last couple of months. We're kind of just under 4% now in the UK, but it's slowly climbing. So I think that's why you had a bit of indecisiveness there, because yes, inflation is much lower, but starting to head in the wrong direction.
Yeah, all right. I hear you on that. Well, let's come back home and take a look at some of the company news that came out of the JSE. TFG, the JSE's biggest loser today, that share plummeting about 8% today. I mean, of course, they released their 13-week update, posting double-digit growth in group sales. The only region that didn't perform well, which I think is expected, is Australia. I mean, I didn't think that the market would react like this. What did you get from that update?
So, Zanati, they showed group sales to be up 11.5%. We also saw strong online sales from Bash, but coming off a low base. Like you said, Australia wasn't great, but Australia had a stellar time during the kind of the COVID period, where they effectively doubled revenues from, I think it was 2019 to 2022. But if you strip out the White Stuff acquisition, which the Fashini Group did in the last couple of months, group sales were only at 2.5%.
Oh.
So I think the concern here in apparel is that you're just taking market share from someone else. You know, the market in South Africa is not growing. The pie is actually not growing. The Fashini Group is a very well-run business. It's a tight ship. Mr. Price, similar, very well-run tight ship. But, you can't create growth in an environment where no growth exists. So I think markets were clearly disappointed with the numbers today.
Yeah, and actually quite concerning, because this is the day after a report came out of the market share gains the market share that Shein and Temu have gained over the last couple of years. Well, let's go into telecoms. MTN came out with an interim trading statement. Of course, this is on a group level, saying that they expect a robust performance. In terms of HEPS, they will be swinging from a loss to a profit. Interestingly, while other companies are talking about an increasingly challenging economic backdrop, MTN is highlighting improved macro conditions. What's your take on what they achieved?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the environment in which they operate, or the geographies. I think the likes of Nigeria has had a torrid time in the last couple of years, but things seem to be stabilizing. And the results from MTN Nigeria were very, very good running through them. The prepaid segment in South Africa is still a challenge. They flagged that in the results, but strong growth from Nigeria as well as Ghana. And, operating in Nigeria and Ghana is going to bring a lot of volatility, and we've kind of seen that with MTN's share price over the last couple of years. So I think it's more of a trading stock, in my opinion, as opposed to a long-term investment.
All right. What about SAPI? Because that's quite a cyclical one. They released their third quarter results. Year-on-year revenue declining by 4%. Company also posting a loss there. We did see the share giving up about 2% at some point. Is this all bad news?
It's been a torrid year for Sappi if you look at their share price. Mondi's fared a little bit better, but over a rolling 1 year period, both have really
Yeah.
struggled. It's a really tough environment for these kind of businesses. The only thing, shame, looking at their results, the only thing that looked up was their debt levels. Everything else was going the wrong way. So there's a lot of macro factors that are outside of their control. You know, we've seen slow economic growth, the tariff issues. It's all kind of something they're flagging in their updates. But hopefully now that we've got a bit of clarity with the tariffs, you know, companies can start planning accordingly, and we can all kind of just move on from this, and things will hopefully be easier for the likes of Sappi.
We'll talk about planning accordingly. That's certainly what Meta has been doing. They released their half-year trading statement. Basically talking about continuing progress in optimizing that business model. Also, the metrics, they're looking better. Just unpack that performance for us.
Yeah, so Meta is not one I follow too closely, but looking at the results, they looked okay, but the acquisitions of Hesto and AutoZone kind of distort those results. Debt levels still very much on the high side. They flagged that, but no debt covenants breached. While the group reported a headline profit, we did see some once-off accounting losses relating to the acquisition, and that had some consequences there. But it seems like the underlying businesses are heading in the right direction, despite what we saw in these results. Not one we hold for clients, and not one I follow too closely.
Well, some optimism coming in from investors there is that shares climbed 6%. Well, talking about optimism, what are you optimistic about today? Your stock pick, Andrew?
Zanati, I'm going with a very boring business. It's Linda or Lindy, depending on where you live in the world. They are the world's largest gas company, so quietly powering the global economy. You think of keeping food fresh, running hospitals, enabling semiconductors and clean hydrogen. So very boring business, the opposite of NVIDIA, but they've achieved 17% per annum in US dollars over the last decade. So in a noisy world with lots of AI, Linda just shows that boring businesses can still do very, very well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your insights on what has moved our money today, Andrew. That was Andrew Padoa from Sasfin Wealth.